You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Hey y'all! We're back! Did you miss us? Oh, I know you did. I know you've all sent me hundreds and hundreds of Christmas cards that must have all got stuck at the post office because they couldn't find a lorry big enough to deliver them, saying, Penny, where's Haunted Histories? We need you! Well, I hope, joking aside, that you all had an absolutely brilliant festive season and New Year, and you're all ready and raring to go with a new 2018. Scary. I haven't written 2017 on any paperwork yet or anything, but I'm sure it'll happen. Probably about June. It always seems to be happening about June that I start writing the wrong date in. But anyway, we thought tonight, because it seemed a bit unfair to be getting guests or whatever who might still be a bit, well, finishing the old Christmas booze off and everything else, to come on a show. So we thought we'd do a Ghost Adventures type thing. Aftershocks, I think their show's called, isn't it? But ours will be better. Of course it will. But we thought we'd revisit some of our favourite shows as a station that Haunted Histories did over the last, believe it or not, 7-8 months. I know, it seems like I've been going forever, doesn't it? That's probably what you think when I start talking, isn't it? That I'm going on forever. But anyway, joking aside. So, I was actually going to have two of my fellow presenters helping me, but one of them's had to cry off. But instead I am joined by the boss herself, Kerry Greenaway.
Hi, good evening.
Hello, Miss Kerry. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Penny. And how are you?
Well, I'm a bit intimidated as I've got the boss as my guest, so I've got to be on my best behaviour, haven't I?
Yeah, I'm back to cracking the whip, everybody.
Go on, Whiplash. You go for it. Hi, Alan. Thanks for joining us. Before we start chatting about some of the shows, I think there was 5 that we sort of decided we thought were some of our favourites, and that, you know, if you've got nothing to do, they're definitely worth revisiting. Talking about what's coming up in January on Haunted Histories. Now, I was just going through some of these shows with Kerry. I'll let you in on a secret. We were chatting before we went live because, you know, we want this to seem like professional and segue nicely into things, not just a raucous chat over the airwaves. And one of the shows we've got coming up next week, I'm going to be chatting with the awesome Bill Taboni of the Australian Paranormal Society about Fort Nepean, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, in Melbourne, in Australia. So that should be a good one, because Bill never fails to disappoint, does he, Kerry?
He doesn't. He's got, oh God, he's just awesome.
He is an awesome man, and his knowledge is just, well,
phenomenal.
He makes me think, which I always like. And we're also going to be doing one on Horsham House as well. We've also got one on Castle Rising near King's Lynn in Norfolk, which should be an interesting one, because I think it's a place that not many people probably know much about, yet it's got some very, very, very interesting hauntings reputed to happen there. And then at the end of January, we've got Mr. Lee Roberts coming on the show to talk about The Village in Mansfield. So if any of those are floating your boat, so to speak, you know where to go. make sure you listen. And I haven't even told you what we've got coming up for February yet, so I don't want to spoil your appetite with too many goodies just yet. But if there is anywhere that you'd like us to have a look at, do let us know. Always interested to hear some of the places that you feel might be worth the Haunted Histories touch. Kerry, would you say the Haunted Histories touch?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we love that. The Haunted Histories touch.
The touch. But talking about some of the shows that we did last year, and it's hard to believe I've only been doing it since April, as it feels like it does feel like a lot longer. The first one I thought we'd look at is up north in Edinburgh.
North.
Or even further up north than north, but up north of the border, into William Wallace territory, Mary King's Close.
Oh, it's on my bucket list, this
Is
place.
that on your bucket list, is it?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, there are so many places on my bucket list I would just like to add, and most of them have come out of the Haunted History show now. I mean, my list grows every week. It's like, oh, I've got to add that to the list. But Mary King's Close, yeah, that is when you see it on the, like when you watch TV programs and they've been there and, listening to the show and stuff like that, you just have to experience that, don't you?
Well, would it make you jealous if after we did that show, I got a message from the people who run Mary King's Close inviting me there whenever I want?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, I'm the boss, so you have to take me.
I'm sure that's bullying or some kind of harassment or something like that. I'm sure it is. We'll see. I'm not sure when I'm going to get up to Edinburgh because, like you say, with all the shows we do, the amount of places now that we want to go and see, I don't think I'd be at home much.
No, this is the thing, isn't it?
But yeah, exactly. But one of the things that, one of the reasons the Mary King's Close people contacted me after I did the show was to mention about the myth to do with Mary King's, that it was actually bricked up when the plague victims were found. And they wanted to tell me that is a complete and utter fallacy. And in no way, no how, was it ever bricked up with people left in there to die.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I did say to them that I said that was the myth. That's what the story that goes around it. And it is interesting that the chap who wrote the book that I mentioned in the thing, a guy called J.A. Henderson, who does City of the Dead tours, he was one of the ones that said about it being bricked up. But the Mary King's people said there's absolutely no history or no sort of... They actually said that Edinburgh itself was meant to have been quite advanced when it came to the treatment of people with the plague. So, it's one of those... who knows? I do know that any tour that you do of Edinburgh, any ghost tour, any history tour, that's one of the first things they mention. So it would be interesting to actually, if those records that existed from 1645, to find out.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, I just find the whole idea that you've got a whole street, really, completely enclosed underground in Edinburgh, and it must feel so atmospheric when you're down there. I think one of those things, if you're investigating it must be one of those places that you really have to keep an eye on your psychological mindset, because I think it must feel so eerie.
Yeah.
That
almost like pareidolia of the mind starts to kick in.
You'd have to be really aware of that. I think it would be very easy to get caught out from your own mind rather than it being a paranormal activity. I mean, there's been plenty of activity down there, don't get me wrong, but I think you are going to, if you ever do it, you would have to be really careful with your own mindset, because I think it's that kind of place because of it being enclosed and because of it being a street and because of the history of it. I think there's a lot of factors down there that you probably would have to watch yourself when you're investigating, because I think it could play tricks on your mind. Your own psyche could play tricks on you.
Yeah, definitely.
But oh my goodness, it is completely unique in its own right. that place. I mean, Edinburgh itself is just an amazing city, isn't it?
It's an interesting one. Hi, Chris, by the way. Thanks for joining us. Happy New Year to you too. And get in touch with me because you're supposed to be doing a show in February. And yeah, you better be listening. Chris Huff just dropped by to say hello. But he said the sound keeps dying out on him. So I'm reminding him he needs to get in touch with me so we can sort out this show we're doing in February. But yeah, Edinburgh is I mean, you've got, as a historian who loves buildings and the whole social side of it, the city itself is just, if you forget about the paranormal side, the history itself, and the fact that when you've got the vaults, like the underground, the vaults and what they were used for, and the fact people lived down there, the fact that you had Burke and Hare storing bodies down there. I don't think when I last went there, I don't think I did go to Mary King's. I think it hadn't been opened when I last went up to Edinburgh on a sort of non-work trip, so to speak. So I used to have to go over a lot for work. But with friends, I'm pretty sure they didn't open Mary King's up until just after I'd last been there, so I didn't get a chance to see it. I mean, I did do the vaults, and I did have sort of someone tap my shoulder in those because I was at the back of the group because no one else would go at the back because they were all terrified. Yeah. And I did have someone tap my shoulder. I know that I think it's the castle as well. There's meant to be some armoury in the castle that moves, and nobody knows why. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what it must have been like to live in somewhere like Mary King's. I mean, you know, the fact that people think it's underground. It wasn't actually that it was underground. It was just so many buildings got built up. They encased it. So it felt like you were underground because the lower you are, the darker and I suppose more dank it was. But it would be a fascinating one to do. I know our very own Andy Mercer was one of the original people to investigate it. And he loves the place. I also know a friend of mine, she investigated it a few years ago, and she said she got her bum slapped, and there was no one behind her.
Well, maybe I really should visit it then.
You never know, yeah. Well, let's face it, there's nothing wrong with pulling a spirit, you know.
As you know, Penny.
As I know. Well, we're going to get onto that one, so we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that one just yet. But one of the nice things, though, is one of the supposed resident spirits is a little girl. I think she's meant to be about 8 or 9, by the name of Annie. And supposedly I think it was a Japanese psychic picked up on her back in the late 90s, and because obviously the Far Eastern have quite a respect for the dead, don't they? And they do bring them. Yeah. She bought this little girl a present, and that started the trend off that people come there, they bring this little girl presents. Yeah. But what they also do, hi Carl, but what they also do is there's a treasure box that people can put donations into. Okay. And they actually take those donations and they actually give them to proper children's units in children's hospitals. Because this little girl was meant to have died from the plague, that's the myth. So they take any of the money that's raised and give it to the children's hospitals to sort of try almost like a recompense sort of thing, which I think was a really...
I love that.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that.
That is nice. One of our Chris has just said that he can't actually hear anything. If anyone, we are live at the moment, so I'm seeing these messages as they're coming through. If anyone else is having any problems with the sound, can they let us know? It might just be that you need to reboot your system, but hopefully people can hear us.
just refreshing the page sometimes does it. Yeah. Spreaker can be a little bit temperamental.
It can.
So if you just refresh your screen and press the play button, it should kick back in for you. Yeah. Not that if they can't hear us, they wouldn't be able to hear
There's no point me saying it, is there? No. So Chris probably didn't hear me lecturing him.
For future reference.
For future reference, yeah. So Mary King's is on your to-do list now.
Oh God, so many locations you've covered are now on my list, and it's, oh my God, my dog's having a moment.
He wants to come too.
He wants to come too. Clearly,
exactly.
Terrify the life out of him. But yeah, no, that definitely on my list. I'd seen it on probably a TV program before,
right?
And thought it looked an amazing place to go and just visit some of these places, not even necessarily investigate them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it just looks it kind of hits all the buttons for me in regards to history. I'm going to have to go and slap my dog in a minute. Between kids and dogs, I tell you, everyone's had their routine.
My eldest has actually crept downstairs and is now sitting on the sofa reading his book. And he's used sign language with me so that I didn't shout at him to keep quiet.
That's when you do a lot of pointing and cat bum faces.
And sliding your finger across your throat and pointing at the computer. Yeah. No, I know what you mean about Mary King's. It's the social side of it, as well as the history side, as well as the potential for what could be.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me very much of York City. I mean, reminds me that era, that kind of vibe. Edinburgh is a bit older than that, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's got more of that going on, but I would imagine.
I'd say it's similar ages, different styles, because Edinburgh was never Viking or Roman.
Oh, right.
Whereas obviously York was. Edinburgh was Celtic.
Yeah.
But from an age perspective, I'd say age-wise they're very, very similar. But it's different stone, it's different styles of buildings. Yeah, I mean, obviously we did the York show with the brilliant Mr. Entwistle just before Christmas and talked about it, and we're going to come back and do another York show because we didn't even touch the sides.
And that's how Edinburgh feels to me. It's the same sort of thing. You could go and do several shows just on Edinburgh, and things that are in Edinburgh, because it's just like a little history pot all by itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ancient towns. I mean, I'd put, say, Norwich in with that. Canterbury, I'd probably put in with that. It's another one that's not that well known for what it's got, but believe me, it's got a lot. Possibly even places like Bath as well, from all these cathedral cities. They've got so much stuff. Yeah. Although sadly, with places like Norwich and Bath and even Canterbury to an extent, so much of the beautiful stuff has been ripped down. Yeah. Whereas York and Edinburgh, they have kept quite a lot of it and been proud in the fact they've still got a lot of it. But yes, it's. I will take the Mary King's people up on their offer at some point. Just not sure when.
I know that is always the factor, though, isn't it? I mean, this is something we find quite difficult.
Yeah,
there is so much you want to do.
Yeah,
but life gets in the way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be great if you was like a millionaire and didn't have to work, and then you'd be able to do all of these wonderful places.
If this was your job. If this was your job and you had a reason.
This is your job. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
so if anyone wants to sponsor me to do any of these, I'm quite happy.
Our research team.
Oh yeah,
the whole of us.
Well,
we'll travel the world for you and bring you amazing shows.
Yeah, of course. Well, what should we talk about next? Talked about Mary King's. Which one should we talk about next? Which show would you like to talk about next, Kerry?
Well, going overseas. I want to go overseas on this one because this is something that has fascinated me for absolutely donkey's years. And this is the Amman House, or the Manson murders.
Where the Manson murders were,
Yeah, and, being as he died recently, and all that stuff. That whole... that fascinates me, that whole historical time span of him and his family, his clan or whatever you want to call them, and then where it led to, and then the murders. And actually now I find it even more fascinating that the house that everyone says is really haunted is like 150 yards away from where the actual house was.
That's exactly right, yeah.
And yet they're still getting activity. And then you get the American Burial Ground, ancient, curse of the ancient American Burial Ground thing going on, linked into there as well. Again, so many facets to that case. And I find a lot of investigators, people who are into the paranormal or the supernatural, actually take not just an interest in the supernatural paranormal side of things, but they love the history and they love a murder mystery and they love, a crime, true crime and stuff like that, because it's the cycle. I think it's the psychological link of it all. How does your brain work? Why do people do what they do to create that? What imprint does that have on the environment? And goes on in a sort of circle of that's why it leads you down into that sort of road. And so that whole case, when you did that with Emily and Tammy, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Tammy Guyamadi and Emily Kirkpatrick of Three Girls in the Dark. Yeah.
Brilliant girls. I've spoken to them. They're fantastic girls.
They're awesome, aren't they? They'll be back. They're coming back again in this year as well for some more shows. In fact, Emily, it might be her whole team. All three of the three girls. Well, there's 2 girls and a boy, but for all the so herself, Gina, and Ryan. Hopefully, we might be doing a show on the Villisca Axe House, the Axe Murder House.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Yeah. And Tammy is probably going to be back. She's investigated the Prague tunnels.
Oh,
before. Wow. But she also is doing an investigations at a place that was a reformatory school in California as well. So we might have a couple with Tammy and her crew. So yeah, they're going to be back. They're going to be back. But yeah, they were the ones. That's
one thing we said last night actually on the Paranormal Concept show, was that every single guest we've had on have been so happy and willing to come back and talk to us and share their experiences. And that's been an absolute blessing through Parasearch, is that we get to talk to so many amazing people. And,
definitely.
You know, those 2 girls, they're hysterical for a start. They're so full of life that you feel. I always think I'm quite a high energy person, but trust me, there's nothing compared to these ladies.
It's no surprise that they're friends with Jay and Teresa Lynch, is it?
No surprise whatsoever in any way.
And anyone who knows Jay and Teresa will know exactly what I mean by that. That wasn't actually an insult or anything along those lines.
No.
But
you can imagine those parties, can't you? I don't think me and you would keep up at all. I don't know. I think you might.
I don't know. It depends if I had any sleep on the aeroplane going over. But yes, it was with those 2, and they got to investigate it quite recently. But what was interesting in what they said is that the owner of the place didn't leave. He stayed down in the basement. And he didn't take his animals out either. So consequently, there was an awful lot of noise pollution, and they couldn't, or contamination, whatever you want to call it, and they couldn't tell with some of the things that were happening. A lot of them they ended up debunking as being human or animal related. Because one of the things I find most weird about the place is it isn't built on the site of the original house. It is built sort of 150 yards away. It's on part of the plot. I think the plot had 2 houses built onto it. Yeah. And it's in the location, the locale of it. But it makes me wonder if any of the other houses in that locale have anything happening to them, or is it just the Aman house because he's got it full of memorabilia from Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski, Manson stuff.
Yeah.
Or is it that it is to do with the fact it was meant to have been an ancient Native American burial ground? Is that what's... Because to me, and this is one of the things I did say to... I don't know, I appreciate your thoughts on it, but it didn't make sense to me why somewhere that wasn't even built on the foundations of where it happened. And hi, Joe. Sorry, I didn't say hello to you just then. Late's better than never. Late's better than never, my love. Why is somewhere where... I mean, when you look at somewhere like Woodchester Mansion in Gloucestershire, which I'm hoping to get to investigate in the summer this year, hoping to. When you look at somewhere like that, the mansion itself is unfinished. And one of the questions I asked the guys from Ghostly Goings On, I think it was Anita who talked to me about that one, but I also asked Chris, who runs the place, Ghost Chasers, why, if no one's ever lived there, is there so much activity? And it was then they sort of said, well, it was actually built on the foundations of an existing house that had been there 200-300 years. So that kind of makes sense why there's still energy, because, you know, whether it's spirits or residual, they won't necessarily acknowledge the fact it's different walls. They might still be seeing, which is one of the things they believe with spirits and stuff, isn't it? That they see where the door would have been rather than where the door is now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make sense with the Amman house.
No, it doesn't. I mean, that is a subject I've been touching on, particularly when I've been talking with, obviously, Jay and Teresa in America. Is this, ancient American burial ground factor? Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of places go, like the Amityville house, and I was talking to Alex Matsua. She was talking about a private case that she had, and that was an ancient American burial site. And from what I know of the Native Americans, is some of their burial rites aren't actually anything to do with how we view burial rites.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't get that. And that's something that I'm trying to track down, an actual Native American that will come on and discuss this particular topic, because it is obviously in America, they do sort of go, oh, it's because of this. And you go, that doesn't fit for me, because in the UK, we have plenty of graveyards, you know what I mean? And most people won't bother investigating, because they'll go, it's more likely to be in the building that somebody loved. They'll go there rather than hang around where they died.
Yeah.
Is it the belief system thing? I don't know. But that's the key point with the Amman house, is why. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because for all the facts as we've just said, but the whole story of the Manson fascinates me because of the psychological effect that man had on people. He
never killed anyone.
And he never did the deed himself.
And,
but that just goes to show how powerful somebody can be.
Well, that's my point exactly with him. Well, I was having a discussion with someone. I can't remember who it was. It was after the show went out, and they said, should he have got a life sentence?
Yeah.
Because he didn't kill anyone.
Doesn't matter.
I said, yeah, but he did. He did. But he didn't use a conventional weapon. He used his followers as his weapons.
Yeah.
So, to me, someone who can manipulate someone to do something like that, something that heinous, however you want to pronounce it. I mean, let's be honest. They stabbed to death an 8.5-month pregnant woman.
Yeah.
And strangled her all at the same time. Anyone who, whether you're on drugs or not, I'm sorry, but anyone who can be convinced by somebody else to do that, the person who can convince them, to me, is more dangerous than the person who, in effect, pulls the trigger or uses the knife. Because it's like when you get cases where someone has hired someone to kill their husband, for example.
Yeah.
Is it the hitman who kills the husband who's at fault, or is it the person who hired the hitman to kill the husband, or hitwoman to kill the husband? And to me, I think it's quite right when it's the wife or the husband, whoever hires the person, who gets the bigger sentence, because all they're doing is using a secondary weapon. So their weapon is that human who... Do I think being an assassin is a good career choice? Probably not. But,
I looked into it. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I'm quite a good shot, actually. I am quite a good shot, actually. But anyway, maybe I should think about it. But the point is that Manson, the fact that it wasn't just a case of he said to someone, here's £20,000, go and kill Roman Polanski's wife.
No.
He managed to whip them up into a frenzy that they absolutely decimated those people.
Yeah, they got themselves into such... Yeah, like you say, it was an absolute frenzied attack. And then to tell them they didn't do a good enough job. Yeah. You know what I mean? Go and do it again.
No, the next night go and murder another couple who live reasonably nearby.
Yeah.
Crazy. I think, maybe if he'd been born to a different family, shall we say, not to a single mum who wanted nothing to do with him, who shipped him off to all manner of things, who he was abused, he was all of these kind of things. He probably would have ended up being a world leader with that kind of power. Because,
unfortunately, I think you could be right.
Yeah?
Under a different set of circumstances.
Yeah. Changing sliding doors and all that sort of analogy and stuff. You look at someone like Hitler. Hitler was... Hitler, Stalin was another one. Ultimate bad guys. But it was almost acceptable. Not acceptable, that's the wrong way of putting it. But people followed them in their droves.
Yeah.
Because they had that magnetism. Now, Manson must have had that magnetism.
He must have done. No matter what he was sort of like that kind of level, but in a commune, in that tiny little family that the Manson family. And the love of it is that influence continued with some of those people years after, even whilst in prison. Some of them never lost that faith in him. You know what I mean? He was like a mini messiah. He really, like you say, it's a sliding door thing. Given him a different set of circumstances, maybe a different era, maybe he'd taken a different life choice, he could easily, I think you're right, that power of his personality, that power of his manipulation, pure, you can't understand it.
Magnetism.
Yeah, you can't understand it. I mean, we've all met people that have that, but luckily enough, we, never succumb to that. But you see it in cults quite a lot when you have mass cult killings and stuff like that, where a leader has got that. That's, another thing that I find absolutely fascinating, how it's not just one or two people they have that influence and that manipulation on. It is, a lot of people, men and women, not just like a man using his manipulation techniques or whatever on a woman. It'll be men and women will fall under this wave of personality.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? And do things they never would normally do. I find it absolutely fascinating.
It's like a mass hysteria thing. I know you see it when you go to certain gigs, like the big gigs with a band, and you see everyone suddenly. I mean, I experienced it first time I saw when I was about 16, and I saw my favourite band. And I mean, I'm not into pop. I still am rock and heavy metal and all that kind of thing. And it's this band I'd been following since I was about 13, and I finally got the chance to get to see them, and I was, excited wasn't the word. I think if I'd had any children at that point, I'd probably been wetting myself. I was that excited. And I got right down the front. A couple of my friends lifted me up on their shoulders and dropped me literally down the front. So I was right there as the guitarist came out. And as the intro started, I just burst into tears. But the thing was, there was loads of us just going absolutely bonkers. And you felt yourself doing it. And it was almost, why am I doing this? This isn't me. And you kind of carried along in it. And it's a similar kind of thing. When you watch videos of the Nuremberg rallies, with Hitler. Now, I guarantee 20 or 30% of those people were just doing what they were supposed to do because they were terrified. Yeah. But most of them, they were absolutely entranced by him.
Completely entranced by him. And so when you sort of take individual people like Manson, okay, that's a small scale considering against someone like Hitler, but you kind of look at those people and you think, my God.
Same principle.
Same principle, that influence that somebody can have and get the right kind of power behind it, the propaganda like you did have with Hitler at the time. Yep. We were quite lucky, really, with Manson that he sort of stuck to a small family and it was a poor man's version, I suppose. But that whole show, again, you talk about facets of the paranormal. So there's a psychological factor, and then going into the paranormal, why would that house be haunted? Because it is only on 150 yards from where they allege, where the actual house was supposed to have been. And is it a hype thing because of all the mental triggers that are in the property?
It would be interesting to know what happens in the neighbouring houses.
Exactly.
Because they're all quite close. When you look at the pictures of them, you can see they're all Right, they're not terraces, but there's not much between them. I'd be interested to know if anything happened to those, but apparently they don't go public.
Seem to have any activity,
or they don't go public with it. They don't want it to be notoriously their house is in where the Manson house was, or the Manson murders were. Sorry, not the Manson house, but the Tate house.
They don't want to have that, about it. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it is. I find that fascinating about that particular house. So. Yeah, so that's one of my favourites.
After we have a 30-second break, we're going to come back to another one of my favourites. And this is another one a lot of people say to me, why should I go? Why is it haunted? But I don't know if you know what I'm talking about yet. But anyway, 30-second break, don't go anywhere.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Yeah, we're still here. Still bringing you some of our favourite shows. Excuse me, I just swallowed the wrong way. Favourite shows from 2017. Kerry Greenaway and I, the boss. She is the boss. She is Madam Whiplash of Parasearch.
I know there's a name I haven't been called before.
Yeah, right. Was it on your business? Oh, is that not what's on your business card? Is it Miss Whiplash on your business cards?
It's a miss, yeah.
It's Miss Whiplash, okay. Sorry. One of the things Alan pointed out, Manson equaling Hitler, it's an interesting thought. I'm not necessarily Manson is the same as Hitler. What I'm saying is it's that same kind of magnetism, that same kind of ability to get people to follow you, to do things which are you wouldn't comprehend normally. And to me, those kind of people, those who can influence people to do things like that, are more dangerous than someone who'll go out and just shoot someone in the street. To me, they've got more power and more unpredictability in a way, because they're not doing it themselves. I can almost understand serial killers. When you read up on why they're doing it, you can see the pattern. If you watch something like Mindhunter on Netflix, that program's absolutely brilliant if anyone's into that kind of thing. And they talk about the guys who actually invented the term serial killer for the FBI back in the 70s, and they started looking at categorizing what makes serial killers do it, what patterns could they find, what common denominators were there. That kind of makes sense in a crude kind of way. But what possesses someone to actually want to make people... Are you watching that now, Joe? Good. Better not be right now. No, you should be listening to me and Kerry right now. But it's a very good series. I can't wait for series 2 to come out. But, you know, someone who actually seems to feel the need to control people, to kill other people, that I can't get my head around. I genuinely can't get my head around it. But nevertheless, it happens. It still happens. It will always happen because it's just the way of human nature. But no, Manson, if you didn't listen to the Aman House show, go back on our Spreaker app and have a listen. Yeah. Oh, you paused it, have you? Oh, bless you. Which episode are you on? What are they doing at the moment? Because I really enjoyed that. I binge-watched about 5 episodes in one go. I enjoyed Mindhunter so much. But anyway, the next place we're going to talk about is one of my choices. And possibly because it's just up the road from me. So I get home at a reasonable time. Although I did it all overnight when I went there. And that was Kelvedon Hatch. Not so secret. Nuclear bunker.
Yeah.
Have you ever been there, Kerry?
No, again, a place I haven't been to, but I need to go because I have theories of my own on this one.
Okay. Well, when I recorded the show on this one back in September, I'd never actually investigated it. Oh, good girl, Joe. You binge watch. It's good, isn't it? Sorry. Joe's just mentioned she's on the last one of Mindhunter. Yeah. There is a series 2 apparently coming, so I'm looking forward to that one. Kelvedon Hatch. I'd visited it during the day as a punter, so to speak, and it was somewhere I thought that would be so much fun to investigate, see if anything really is down there. One of my goals was to sleep the night there, which I did, albeit I got about 3 hours sleep, but I spent the night there in the bunk beds that are there, the original bunk beds, I believe. The fact that the place is actually not that old, it was only built 1951, only used as a military facility, as what they called the rotor, one of the rotor bases, which was the early warning nuclear systems. It was only used as that for about 12-18 months before it went to kind of civilian use, ending up as regional general headquarters for local government, I think for London government. So it's not that old. It was only decommissioned in 1992, so it's not been shut up for very long. And oh, by the way, Joe, if you ever go there, make sure you go to a Kelvedon hatch and not Kelvedon, because they're two different places in Essex. One's one side of Chelmsford and the other one's the other side, so it's Kelvedon hatch. People in Kelvedon get quite upset about the fact people think the nuclear bunker is in their little village. Anyway, it's one of those that I like it there. Weirdly, I find it quite comfortable.
But that hits your war kind of vibe that you like a bit of all the war thing, don't you? And it must feel very much like that.
I do, but I have been to war-related things that have put me on edge, is what I mean. I you know, when you watch some of the ghost the sort of television programs on it, they're saying, oh, it's like walking into the depths of hell, it's underground. Because it's about, I think it's about 38 metres underground.
Yeah.
And I was chatting to someone the other day. I was trying to one of my mum and dad's neighbour, actually. I was trying to convince her to come and visit it when she comes to Essex to see us. And she was, oh, no, it'd be claustrophobic. And I was like, it doesn't feel claustrophobic. You just feel like you're in almost like a factory come office block.
Yeah. That's
what it feels like. It's all like your khaki type colours and, 1960s kind of... Well, it's not utilitarian because that was 1940s, but that kind of... sort of it's very sort of functional and oldie worldy, like earlier this last century. But I didn't feel frightened there. I would have quite happily wandered around it on my own at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning. No problem with that. There didn't, although I could feel stuff going on, none of it felt particularly nefarious. It didn't feel ominous at all. But one of the interesting things was when I did the show with it was with Gemma from Fright Nights Cambridgeshire, who did the show in the September. She had mentioned that people had said they could smell this burning smell in one part of the building, and that was interesting because when the husband and I went there about 4 or 5 years, oh no, crumbs, it was before Will was born, so 9 years ago, for my birthday. That's what I wanted to do for my birthday that year. I know I'm weird like that. For our wedding anniversary one year, we did Duxford Air Museum. I mean, I practice what I preach. We both smelt this burning smell, but we figured they must have tried to start up one of the generators or something, because the rumour is this place is still functional. It could still be used if it was needed to.
Yeah.
But we smelt this burning smell in a different place to where Gemma reported her people smelt it. Mm-hmm.
What interests me about this particular location is, although I haven't been there myself, I've spoken to several different people that have been there at different occasions, mediums and sensitives and stuff like that. Now, they all report an alleged spirit, but it's always a different one. Mm-hmm. And the smell, I think, because it's built as a Faraday cage, Kelvedon hatch, I think when they built it, they've actually trapped an elemental, and the elemental will appear as something that is expected, as it were, from whoever is picking up those mental clues from the person that's working, and will appear as it should do. And I think it's not individual spirits. I think it's an elemental that's trapped within that location. So for me, that is something I'd be really interested to go and investigate for myself. Working with energy in the way I do, maybe I'd pick up something different to what other people have picked up. Maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. But until I go, I don't know. Do you know? It's kind of one of those things. But that's what, from listening to what other people have said about it, that's kind of where I would go with that more than it's being haunted by a specific person energy. Do you know what I mean? I think it's more an elemental, and I think it's trapped because of the way in the building of the place. I think that's when that got trapped in, and with the smell of burning, that would fit with an elemental.
Oh, right. Well, have you got any shows coming up on your show talking about what exactly elementals are and how they differ from...
Yeah, I mean, we like to cover all sorts of different things. I'm trying to get Mr. William Becker on, who did a talk at Paraforce last year on elementals.
Okay.
So that is a show that I'm trying to pin him down on. Bless him. I nag people relentlessly.
That's how we get our job done, though, isn't it, hun?
Yeah, true that. Some people are like, "Well, you just leave me alone. I haven't got any dates until,
2019.
6 months' time." Yeah, I mean, there was a few people last year was like, "Contact me in the new year," and I'm like, "Yeah, I will do. Don't you worry about that."
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one person I do want to get on to talk
be
about elementals, because it is that whole elemental side of things is completely fascinating, because that links into earth energies and stuff like that. So, but that's what I. Yeah, partly, bless. But yeah, that's really where I go with Kelvin and Hatch. But as I say, until I experience it for myself, I don't know. It's only a theory, listening to what other people have said about that particular place.
It sounds plausible. Plausible. But when I was there, I was picking up on an awful lot of hustle and bustle. There seemed to be an awful lot of. I could feel stuff hustling and bustling around me. That's the only way I can explain it. And actually, the medium who was there, he felt it too, because he mentioned it. And it wasn't so much that there was anyone. I mean, we'll talk about the experience I had there, because it's quite an interesting one.
Yeah.
But the weird thing was, the weekend I was there was when there was a very high chance that North Korea were going to press the button. Do you remember that time in September when there was everyone was quite concerned what North Korea was going to do? Yeah. And there seemed to be quite a heightened sense of potential, is the only way I can think of it. And like I say, there wasn't a lot went on, but it just felt like there was things flying past you. It was like you were walking through a crowd of people in central London. That's the only way I can describe it. Nobody's talking to you, nobody's acknowledging you, but they're there. And what was very strange is that myself and actually the guys from Fright Nights London, Kerry and Steve, we were in, I think it's the radio room. Now you're 3 stories underground in there. And we thought Steve and I were both picking up on someone was in there with us, and we put the spirit box on to see if we could communicate. And we had different voices coming through saying things like hurricane, floods, global warming, all weird things. Then we were like, we must be picking up different radio stations, because I know that's how a spirit box works, but we must be picking up actual radio stations down here. And then I thought, well, how can it?
It's a Faraday cage.
I'm 3 stories underground. And then it was different voices saying these words. Then when we sat and listened back to I'd put a digital recorder next to it to record it in case we did get anything substantial. And we was like, well, actually, if there had been a suspected nuclear strike, wouldn't there be flooding, hurricanes, all that kind of thing? The weather systems would go nuts. And it was quite an interest. We were saying like, because when we put it on again, the next floor up, not a sausage, nothing. And I spoke to someone I know who's sort of into radios and signals and everything, and I said, could it have picked up and he said, only if you'd attached it to the main aerial. That's why the aerial for those places was so big, so that it could. He said you'd have had to wire it into the aerial to actually pick up anything on one of those things. So that was quite an interesting thing. Then there was another, we were in the comms room, which would have been where people would have sat communicating with like oil, post office, gas, all those kind of things, the telegraph machines. And the guys were doing a yes-no spirit board. And I thought I'd sit back and watch them do it, because I like to observe sometimes. I don't always want to be in the thick of things. Sometimes I like to just watch and take it in.
Yeah, sit back and watch other people. Yeah, and how they're reacting.
Exactly. And my spirit box was in. I wear one of those combat bags on my thigh that straps to your thigh, because then it's easy to get everything. It's not getting knocked about. And my spirit box has its own pocket. It turned on in my bag as they were asking, "Is there anyone here you want to talk to?" And I was like, "I'm so sorry. I must have knocked the button." Now those things aren't that easy to turn on. You have to hold the button down.
Oh, tell me about it. Yeah, no, tell me about it. You know me and tech, I'm crap at it, and I find them things hard enough to work when you actually got them in your hand trying to work them, let alone when they're in your pocket, you know.
So it's pitch really quiet, and all of a sudden you hear a I'm like, really, really sorry, guys. Took it out of the bag, switched it off, and it was on. Switched it off, put it back in the bag again. It's not touching anything. It's in a pocket. It's not like my jeans. It's in this bag on my leg. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat as well, so it's not touching anything. They start asking the board questions. Is there anyone you want to talk to? I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't think. I'm sorry. I must have knocked it. And it was at that point that Mark said, I think they want to talk to you. And so I was like, oh, okay. And I came on the board. Is there anyone here you want to talk to? Shoot straight at me. Do you want to talk to Penny? Yes. Does Penny remind you of someone? Yes. It was weird. So, because we were all there, and we said we'll come back later when we split off, me and 3 other people went down to this room with the board again and the glass, and there was myself, Kerry from Friday Nights London, her now fiance, Steve from Friday Nights London, and another lady. And we couldn't get it to... It was just like the glass was drifting around the board, if that makes sense. It wasn't really...
Yeah.
And Steve said, oh, I just feel like someone's pulled me backwards. Like pulling me away. Not nastily, but just like, come on, move. And so he said, do you want Steve to leave the table? And it shot straight to yes. Do you want him to leave the room? No. So he went and sat away from us. From then on, the answers we were getting were quite, should we say, strong?
Yeah.
And we asked this spirit if he was attracted to me, because they found it was me that he'd come to talk to. Yes. We found out he was 22.
Ooh, wow.
RAF military policeman. So he would have been there in the very early 50s when it was still a military facility. We worked that one out. That's where my history came in, because I asked that. I said, were you here in 1952? Yes. Were you here in 1954? No. So by knowing my history, I was able to pinpoint yes, no questions. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it transpires he didn't just want to take me out. He wanted to take me out for drink and dinner and yes, maybe more. And when they said, do you want to take maybe more with Penny, the glass started shaking like it was laughing. It was quite surreal. And then they said, one of the, I can't remember which of the ladies it was, said, do you want us to bring any more ladies down onto the table? And it said yes. And I just said, are you trying to make me jealous? It started shaking again and went to yes.
Oh, how funny.
It was strange, but what got even weirder, now I've had arguments about orbs with people before. I'm not everything is an orb brigade at all, but I do think there is the potential, or that 1% potential, that something could be paranormal and not dust. But Kerry and I were in the bunk beds, and Steve, who claimed he wasn't going to be able to go to sleep, had gone to sleep within 30 seconds and was snoring his head off. Her and I are sort of snuggled into our sleeping bags, and she takes a photo of me. And on the front of my sleeping bag is this white mark. And I said, oh, it's probably a stain. It's Wayne's sleeping bag. He uses it for fishing. He's probably spilt bleach on it, or couldn't see it in the dark, but
I'm glad you clarified the stain of Wayne's sleeping bag.
Yeah.
It's fishing, guys.
Fishing. It was fishing. It's his fishing bag. You could smell it was his fishing bag. But she took another photo straight away, and the light mark had gone. Okay, probably dust. It gets rolled up and shoved in the shed for when he goes fishing. Probably dust. So at that point, I said, well, I'm going to go to sleep now. And I rolled over. She rolled over, so her back's to me. Now, there was not enough, it was too big a space for someone to reach over and touch me. Someone squeezed my shoulder. I sort of went, "Ugh!" and turned, thinking it was Kerry. She was already on her side, inside her sleeping bag. She couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
There was no one else there. Someone squeezed my shoulder. Proper squeezed my shoulder. We're wondering if it was my 22-year-old.
Ah, you never know.
You never know. But that's one of the most sort of prolific touches, if you like, I've ever had. But my theory on why it's haunted is because the pressure people are under who work there, it's kind of, they pull back to it because it was conditioned into them. Because after I investigated it, I actually met someone whose dad had worked there during the 60s. He'd worked there when the Cuban Missile Crisis was kicking off. And he used to come home every day. He didn't come home for 4 days one time. And when she got older, she looked into the dates, and it was exactly when the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think the American computer system said they'd launched, and the whole place got shut down. They were all locked in. That's why I think there's still spirits there. Because they've gone back there, because they were conditioned to be there.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
Okay, wow. As I say, until I go, I can't sort of like, I don't know. But as I say, just talking to people, it's interesting to hear different people's theories on it, because it is an interesting place to go to.
Oh, yeah.
It's fascinating. It's one of those, isn't it? It's one of those, just the name, the secret nuclear bunker. It's not a secret, but, you know,
that's why I call it the not-so-secret nuclear bunker.
Yeah,
but it's not that easy to find. If they didn't signpost it, you wouldn't find it.
No.
It's off this dirt track, this like mile-long dirt track. You think you're lost. You think you're just driving through fields.
Yeah.
So I can understand.
And then it's just there.
Yeah. What I don't understand is why when it was being constructed, nobody went AA. But the only thing I can think of is it was so close to the Second World War ending and people not questioning things. It was all part of that. We turn a blind eye. Something's going on, but we don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'd say it's again on the bucket list. On the bucket list.
It's only up the road for you, really. So.
Well, I know it's not that far from me, but it's
and
kind of always been one of those places.
My little junior historian, your son, I'm sure he'd enjoy it.
Oh, my Leo Bean would. He would. I'm sure he would adore it. To be fair, it's kind of the kind of place he would really enjoy. But yeah, it's just one of those places that I've sort of never got around to going to.
No, it's definitely worth visiting, especially if you're in Essex and you're able to go, even if it's not just an investigation. It's interesting.
Loads of times.
Yeah, exactly. Right, should we do one more? Should we do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more. Yeah.
What would you like to do?
Well,
I think I know which one you're going to pick on.
Yeah, I'm going to go across the pond again. I'm going to go to Bill Taboni.
Really across the pond this time, like down under.
Really,
We're going down under. We're going down under, people.
We're going down under. But because this man's voice. Oh, you pick some people that are absolutely amazing voices. I mean, gosh, there's another
Richard
guy.
Easter.
Yeah, Richard Easter, Bill Taboni. Oh, whew, I get all hot and bothered by the voice. To be fair, and I love a storyteller as well. So I want to just acknowledge Simon Entwistle as well, because he is just awesome.
His voice is lovely. It's mesmerising.
Exactly, and he tells the story with that. But Bill Taboni, you talked about a place in Australia called Arradale.
Yep.
Which I've never heard of this place ever. And that's another thing I think you do absolutely brilliantly, is you don't just focus on like the well-known, hyped-up locations. You bring us something different every single week from around the globe. And this place absolutely, fascinated me.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I don't suppose in the way my lifestyle goes, I'll ever get to Australia. But if I ever do, this place is got to be on this list. This is fascinating. The Arradale, or there was another name for it, wasn't it?
Ararat.
Was it Ararat? That's it.
Yeah. It's in a part of it's in Victoria. I think it's about 80 miles from Melbourne, something like that. And it was called Mount Ararat. It was a gold mine back in the 1800s, and it was originally called Ararat Mental Asylum. But I think it was in the 1960s, off the top of my head, that they decided maybe that was a bit of a harsh thing to call it, and it was renamed Arradale. Or was it Lunatic? It was called Ararat Lunatic Asylum or something like that, and it was renamed Arradale Mental Asylum. And it was the biggest mental health facility in the Southern Hemisphere. At its peak housed over 1,000 patients. What's interesting actually in this one is that there was a Haunted Australia episode on it. which was quite strange because I'd literally just done the interview with Bill when I watched it, and Bill's face pops up on the screen, and I'm just like, my husband, oh, I know him. I talked to him. It was quite weird. But interesting enough, this place is one of the few places that Ian Lawman, the British psychic, has been scared by. It's one of the few places that he's run through screaming. And I just don't see that man being scared by much, to be fair. No, if you watch the episode, he screamed. Apparently that is a true story. And I've heard it from authorities who know him well. It scared him. The place unnerved him to the point where he screamed. But I also know that one of the stories that when Ian was filming in Australia, he got told he was being all macho, as Ian is. I mean, he's an ex-bare knuckle boxer. He's no slouch. The producers who were watching on the cameras told him to not move. And he's like, why? And they went, just don't move. Next thing I know, there's a ranger coming and taking one of the most deadly spiders in Australia off his leg. That
is a good reason not to visit Australia. I would just like to say the wildlife.
Yeah, Bill has promised me that he will protect me from spiders and snakes if I go.
Good. Gosh,
so, I'm tempted, but apparently if I go, I've got to take the husband with me, so the husband says. That kind of puts the damper on it, really. So Arradale, opened in 1867. Interestingly enough, was built on the site of the former cemetery, as well, of the area.
Yeah.
And it has had some pretty interesting things happen there. It's actually featured. You mentioned Richard Estep, the author. It's actually featured in his book, Haunted Hospitals.
Yeah,
it's one of the ones featured in, and that's actually where I got the name for it from, reading that book. So there's some interesting ones in there. But yes, it was a Haunted Australia episode. It actually managed to scare Ian Lawman. Bill knows it very well. He's had quite a lot of experiences there. Another mutual friend of ours, Sarah Chumacero.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's amazing. Well, her brother is also a paranormal investigator, but he's also a bodybuilder. Joe's she just had a quick Google. Wowzers, lots of vineyards there now.
Yeah, vineyards. Me and Joe. Vineyards.
Yeah, you'd get on with Kerry, Joe, trust me.
I think me and Joe would get on quite well. I like the way she focused on the vineyards.
Yeah. Anyway, so Sarah's brother is a bodybuilder. So he's no slouch. He's got a bit of muscle on him. And when they were doing an investigation there, he was pinned up against a wall. And couldn't move. There's also Bill's been scratched on quite a few occasions, and one of the ones that fascinates me that they have happen there is there's a doppelganger.
Yeah.
That tries to lure people in.
Yeah.
That one I find intriguing.
Yeah. Isn't that supposed to happen at Fort Horsted as well?
I don't know. When I investigated Fort Horsted, I didn't have anything like that. Again, Fort Horsted I didn't find spooky in that kind of scary sense. It's spooky in that it's very dark, it's very dusty, and there's no electricity in certain parts of it. But not from sometimes when you walk into a room, you just think, ooh.
Yeah,
ooh,
yeah.
Somebody in here doesn't like me. Didn't get that, but yeah, there's apparently meant to be a doppelganger that's tried, and Bill's team had it happen to them. When one of their team heard one of the other team calling him into one of the buildings, but this person was on the other side of the hospital.
Yeah,
and couldn't have been doing it.
I
find that story really
fascinating. Yeah, that is absolutely. It's things like that keep you intrigued in the paranormal, isn't it? You know, in regards to investigating and stuff like that. It's almost like they were trying to separate people off from the group, and
pick them off. Yeah.
But
I think the thing is, one of the things that Bill and I discussed about Arradale is that people get scared by some of the spirits there, because if you had a mental health problem that necessitated you being hospitalised during your lifetime, you ain't going to have got rid of that once you're gone.
Yeah.
So the spirits that maybe have scared people like Ian Lawman have scared other people that are screaming at windows or banging on doors and all that kind of thing. It may not be that they're nasty, but that's all they know. That's how they communicate. So I'd be interested to know from a feel. Alan has said he's had a similar experience with doppelgangers.
Yeah.
Ooh. Tell us more, Alan. Tell us more. We've got another couple of minutes. Well, we have. We're still talking, so we're still on air.
Yeah, why not? We'll just keep going.
Who wants to go to bed? But it would be interesting to know if it is genuinely a bad feeling. Because he did say to me certain parts of the hospital have worse feelings than other. And I know there is meant to be one of the passageways that used to be uncovered, like almost like a gangway that went between wards that was notorious for suicides.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting if the spirits that scare people are actually trying to scare people, or they're trying to communicate in the only way they know how.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I definitely go with the vibe that you are who you are when you pass over. If you're going to come back, you're going to come back as the same person that you were. So if you were bad in life or had an issue in life, then that's going to manifest in how you come across as a spirit, definitely.
Yeah.
I do find places like asylums or mental hospitals fascinating in their own right, because you are getting different things to how you would normally get them. Mm-hmm. And these places, we're not talking like how we deal. Mental health is nowadays, there's a very different view to mental health to how it was back in those days. And some of the treatments and reasons why people were put in, that was actually one thing that got highlighted in the show, was that you only needed 2 signatures to be admitted into the hospital, to this asylum, but you needed 7 to 8 to get out. And then there's some of the treatments were in such early stages, like the lobotomization and the electric thing,
electroconvulsive therapy, ECT.
Thank you. That's the one. Very, very early stages of development. So they had no idea the effect that they would have on people, and just living under those kind of conditions. Even if you're mentally sound, when you got put in because your husband just didn't like you, or you had something like postnatal depression, people were being put in there for, PMT or postnatal depression. When you start, if you go in there with that, you might not actually, it might just be a transitionary phase from a hormonal imbalance in your body. And then you've got to live under those conditions with people that have got real mental health issues. It's going to send you a bit bonkers, I would imagine. Do you know what I mean? There's not the support. There wasn't the support. And it was viewed incredibly differently back in those days. And I find that side of it in regards to investigating incredibly interesting. Because like you said, they are going to communicate probably in a way that's very different. If you remember, you talked to Jay and Teresa regarding Ashmore Estate. Yep. And they did an investigation with that particular location had downs and
it was a load of adults. It was a load of adults. Yeah, with learning difficulties.
Learning difficulties. And they did an investigation with those same kind of mental state people. Yep. And I'm not saying that's bad, because those people function and are great in their own right. But the results they had on that investigation were absolutely completely different from when they've done investigations before.
They came at it from a different perspective. I know one of the stories Jay told me, that one of the young men who was there, he turned round and he said, 30 years ago I'd have had to live here, wouldn't I? Mm-hmm. And Jay was like, he didn't say it in a kind of an antagonistic way, in a apportioning blame.
No, it's just a fact.
It's a fact. I mean, the fact is that I know it was here for definite. I think it was the same in Australia when I did my research. It took something like 2 signatures to get you institutionalised.
Yeah.
And between 7 and 9 to get you out.
Yeah.
And consequently, most people didn't get out. The fact that you could have been put in because you had an illegitimate baby at 17, and your parents or your family or whatever couldn't cope with it, so there's something wrong with them. The fact that when you read some of the things in the 1800s that women, it is actually women, were institutionalized for, reading too much, being argumentative. That's me buggered.
I was going to say, we'll be in there, won't we?
Reading too much and argumentative. Oh, Joe, are you going to Grasson Hall in February? I'm going to see you there if you are. But yes, so the things that people were institutionalized for, and yes, it did send them. I have a good authority. One of my very, very close friends works in the mental health industry, and she had an elderly lady that she used to go and visit who was placed in a mental health facility I think it was the early 1950s, because she'd got pregnant, illegitimate child, out of wedlock, married man, and her parents decided that she was obviously not right in the head, got her institutionalized. When the home shut, the hospital shut about 50 years later, she was released, care in the community. She couldn't do anything for herself. She did have mental health problems from that, but she didn't when she was 16. So yes, I do think you can develop them, because you don't have a way of developing anything else. When people say how horrific these places were, yeah, I do think it's pretty horrific being in a room next door and you're hearing someone having a frontal lobotomy with no anaesthetic, and you can hear it knowing you're next.
Yeah.
But mental health as a treatment is even now is still in its infancy compared to other things. Joe, I think we'd have been right there with you, love.
Yeah, I think we'd have all been in the same cell.
Probably. They would have locked us all up and thrown away. Argumentative and reading a lot. You know, I pride myself on the fact I'm argumentative and I read a lot, but, you know, might have got me in trouble 100 years ago. But the point is, you know, yes, hearing these things, which is what happened at Arradale, they would have heard the things happening. It's horrific. But some of the doctors and nurses were trying to do as good a job as they could.
Yeah.
When you read about the mortuary, though, that's the one that fascinates me, is that obviously there was quite a high death toll, and they didn't have the facilities to house the bodies, and so a lot of the time they left the bodies outside to dry out.
Yeah.
Things like that I find quite... but it's a different time.
It's a different time. You have to put things in context, and that I think some people forget that. You know, what we find deplorable now was just how they did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just didn't see it was wrong or immoral or anything like that. It's just how they did it back in the day.
They learnt better. They learnt better ways.
Yeah.
But no, Arradale, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some negativity there, because they do seem to be, and I say we'll close on this thought. Your thoughts on this, Kerry?
Okay.
There does always seem to be negative energies associated with places like asylums, hospitals, schools where maybe kids haven't been treated as nicely as they could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's almost like, I can't think of a technical way of putting it, but a roving entity that spots all this energy and thinks, I'm going to come back to Manson. I can do a Manson on this, and I can control it and make it do what I want it to do? Or is it the negative energy from all these people manifesting into something evil? I don't mean a demon. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. A negative, evil presence.
Yeah. There are two schools of thoughts on this one. Now, I want to talk about the shamanistic point of view on this kind of thing. In regards to shamans, they view mental health in a completely different way. They look at it as your vibration is not right, and a spirit is actually trying to help you with that wiring, as it were, and that is why you've got that attachment there, which is causing a bit of an issue. I'm not explaining this very well. I'll have to get a shaman on to actually explain this. Actually, it's absolutely fascinating when you listen to a shaman talk. And what they do is they, rather than treat the illness, the mental health illness, they actually work with the person who's got the problem to work with the spirit to realign that energy.
Okay.
So they start working the spiritual and the mental issue together. And then once they raise those vibrations and bring those in line with each other, then that tends to...
Kind of like a spiritual chiropractor.
Yes. Yes, that's a perfect way of putting it.
There you go.
And
you can have that. You can have that.
Thank you very much. I like that idea. I like that verbal wording. So that's how the shamans view mental health issue.
Right.
You know, they won't just go, okay, well, you've got depression, so we'll chop a pill at it. You know, there is that. I also think that when you are suffering from mental health, this is from a more Western perspective, you are not able to cope with normal stuff. So if an entity is around, it sees an opening, a light, as it were. And because you haven't got your normal filters in place, because you're not able to function in the way you would normally, because you're suffering from, you know, anxiety, depression, ADHD, you know, any of those kind of mental illnesses, it then is attracted to that light. There's a book written by Barry Fitzgerald, funny enough, called The Influence. Called The Influence. Incredibly fascinating topic. It's a theory. He acknowledges it needs a lot more further research. Even in his book, he acknowledges that. But it's a theory that he's come up with, and that's
What's
come
it called
out.
Again? Sorry, Kerry.
It's called The Influence.
The Influence.
When I meet up with you, honey, I'll lend it to you because it's fascinating. Yeah, I've got it, and it's fascinating. And I actually want to get Barry on to a show to discuss this particular topic, because, as I say, it is a theory. It's just a theory that he's come up with. But because of that opening, they will then attach, because it's like a light bulb that's on constantly, because you can't switch that off, because you haven't got your natural filters in place. And there are lots of things that, you know, we don't do on a normal day-to-day level that can help, like looking at diet, looking at, you know, things that you eat and drink and how you work, and in regards to energy and stuff like that. There are lots of things that you can do to help keep your... He says, and one of his little sayings is, don't shine too bright. Because it's like moths. Do you know what I mean?
I was actually going to say flies to a, you know, when flies are buzzing around and gnats and things, and you put the light on, and interesting. That kind of does sort of, because I've always wondered with the asylums, the fact you always get everyone say, oh, dark energies, dark this, dark that, and there do seem to be. My question is always why. I know we'll never really know the answers to these things, like why is the Imman house haunted? Why has Kelvin and Hatch got stuff going on when nobody's died there? You know, there never has been a nuclear war. You know, certain things, you know, why don't people just haunt where they've died as opposed to where they grew up? And all those kind of questions. We'll never know the actual answers, but it's just something that intrigues me, and it intrigues me listening to different people's theories.
Opinions on it. I mean, I always say that in regards to if I was going to come back, then I'd like to think I would be a bit like Jay and cause havoc in the paranormal field. I'll be out there like causing havoc for everybody. But don't underestimate. I just think this is really integral. Don't underestimate people's beliefs when they were alive. You know, the faith, their connections to people that they had when they were alive. They might not have a connection to the building, but if they really love somebody who lived there at that time, then that may be what draws them into that location. You know, all those kind of factors play a part as humans on a day-to-day basis. And if you die, I mean, oh gosh, there's a song. I'm going to reference a song. And it's about, I think it was done by Everything But the Girl. And it was about going back to a place where the person she loved lived and just hanging around outside, basically. And why wouldn't you do that? If you really loved somebody in life, that's the sort of thing you would do as a spirit, surely. You know, go and visit that place where that person where you really adored lived, on the hope that you might see them or, you know, be united with them. You know, it's those kind of emotions that will drive you in life. So why would that change in death? So don't narrow your mind in regards to, well, they're not going to haunt it. Like duty, we talked about Kelvin and Hatch. You said it could be there's hauntings there, not because anyone died there or there was any massive trauma or imprinting on the location. It could just be duty calls them back.
Yep.
In times of national need or a massive political, you go into psi theory at this point, where doesn't that all get uploaded into some form of ultimate consciousness? I don't like to use the word unconscious collective, but or the collective unconscious. I always get it the wrong way around. Andy Nurse is going to be slapping my legs again. Maybe that's a trigger as to why then the spirits start going back to the places that they had, because that triggers their duty, their loyalty, their, training. You know what I mean? Who knows? But it's that I think that is partly why places. Oh, I'm getting all passionate on my soapbox here. Why places.
I just press the button and I listen to you go. I'm quite interested. Go on.
Sometimes get haunted where you don't expect it to be, because it triggers a human emotion that you have in life that you are not going to lose in death if you want to believe that you're the same person when you pass over to who you are today and you're able to haunt. You know what I mean? Why wouldn't that be a trigger to you to go that place or that location or that graveyard or that
There is
family?
no black or white answer.
There's no black or white answer.
Which is, as Joe has said, this is what's amazing about the paranormal. I know that wasn't what you were saying it about, Joe, but it's a similar thing. This is what is so amazing about the paranormal, that if anyone tells you there's a right or wrong answer, kick them out. Because there isn't.
Thank you, Joe. I agree. And I think it's underestimated. Yes. I think we all look so much for sometimes like the scientific reasons why that's happening. And yes, we look at the psychological, but we forget kind of the emotional bonds, and they could be they are the strongest bonds. Emotional are the strongest bonds you'll ever form with people.
Well, I know I'm quite opinionated, and I am, and I admit it, I have opinions on most things. However, it's why I always ask people, why do you think that? Because I'm always interested in learning a different opinion or questioning someone's opinion to dig into it more, because then that questions my opinion. It's not that I am trying to be obnoxious or I'm trying to put someone down or diss their beliefs. It's because I want to understand more.
Yes.
So, and I think that's what I love about all of this, is that most people who are genuinely into it do not get offended when you say, why do you think that? What do you mean by that? Can you explain that to me more? And I think the minute someone says to me, well, it just is, okay, my opinion's right.
But that is what I mean. I have to say, we said this last night, that is the beauty of being a presenter on the shows we do. We get that chance to talk to so many people and like-minded people, and we hear so many different opinions. I mean, I've had my opinion changed on things. I've also argued my point quite extensively with people, but you can have those kind of discussions, that melting pot of discussions, and come away, and it's food for thought, and it helps broaden your own horizons and question things that you might have not thought about in that particular way. And that is what I find so fascinating. Definitely. It is absolutely an amazing, amazing field that we're all involved in. And there are so many different aspects to it. And I love it. I absolutely love it,
don't you? You bloody love it.
Yeah, I do. I love it.
And on that note, I'm going to call the show to a close. Thank you for being an absolutely awesome guest, Kerry. I've really enjoyed discussing the 4 shows that we got to discuss. It's been brilliant, and I have enjoyed listening to your opinion. I have.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
It's
and nice. I love your show, Penny. I don't ever get involved in Penny's show. She goes out every single week, gets on with it, comes out, bangs an amazing show every week, gets amazing guests on. So thank you, Penny, for being such a fantastic part of Parasearch.
Thank you, Miss Whiplash. It's a pleasure. It genuinely is a pleasure. But don't forget, thank you everyone for listening. Really do appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. If you've got any friends who weren't able to tune in tonight you think might enjoy listening to it, you know what to do. Tell them to go and click on that link and they can listen to any of our shows that we do Monday to Sunday, every night of the week. We're there for you. But all that leaves me to say is No, genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. Well, have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.